We have to make sure that the politicians are held accountable.
Every administration had the ability to put a ban on asbestos.
When it comes to asbestos, it really is about power, money, and politics.
Good morning, I'm Steve Markowitz. We're happily right on time, and we'll try to stay right on time. As Linda said, the biographies are in the booklet, so I'm not really going to say much about people. We'll just get started with Cortney Segmen.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Well, thank you to Linda for allowing me to share my story, and thank you all for listening. This was May 19th, 2001. My father, Jalal, also known as JJ Segmen, was returning home to Detroit after a few-week trip to New York City, where he just had his first surgery as treatment for peritoneal mesothelioma. He had 52 staples in the middle of his body and barely had the strength to walk, but that didn't stop him from greeting his family with open arms and the beautiful smile that he was so well known for. I was 8 years old, my brother Omar 6 years old, and my brother Pierre 5 years old. My father was 45 years old. I won't tell you how old my mother is because she's here and might not want you to do the math. I'll never forget the day I came home from school in second grade. My mom sat me down alone and said she had some news to share with me. She got straight to the point and said, "Daddy has cancer." Of course, my mind went to the place where I imagine most 7-year-olds might at the time. Am I not going to be able to spend time with my dad much longer? I remember going to school and my teacher pulling me aside to show support. I dreaded the idea of being that kid, the kid with a parent with cancer. But still, I knew my whole world was about to change, and it did. We were and still are a super close-knit family. Some of my favorite things to do with my dad were go to Pistons games, go to the mall, and spend time outdoors together. When my father was 21 years old, he left Baghdad, Iraq to build a better life for himself. During Saddam Hussein's secular regime in the country, Iraq's Christian population began to shrink, and the exodus has continued today due to religious persecution. Our community found its way and settled in Detroit, Michigan, and San Diego, California, where they continue to live today. When my father first moved to Detroit, or the Motor City, he took a job at an automotive plant and worked with boilers that contained asbestos insulation. He continued to take odd jobs here and there and ended up working as a construction worker for many years, where he likely continued to be exposed to asbestos. Ironically, while working and trying to make a living for himself, he was unknowingly and continuously exposed to a toxin that would financially cost him more for treatment than he was making at work and eventually cost him his life. Fast forward to 2000 when my father was 44. My grandmother, Mama Madi as we called her, kept pestering him to go get checked out because he was gaining a lot of weight in his stomach. He almost looked like he was pregnant with twins or triplets. His stubborn Arab self finally went to get checked out at a hospital in our neighborhood. I have to warn all the expert medical folks here that I'm merging multiple versions of medical history together for my aunts and mom, none of which have experience in medicine, so I apologize for some vagueness. I realized I should have pulled the medical records, but it was a little bit too late. When he went to the doctor in our neighborhood, they drained gallons of water from his stomach. And they weren't sure, and I apologize, I don't know if it's stomach, but in that area, and weren't sure why. So they took some tests and identified that he had cancer. They recommended he went to some of the best research and treatment institutions in our state, University of Michigan or Carmanos, who eventually discovered he had mesothelioma and weren't comfortable treating him. This was early 2001. The ladies in my family went to work. My father was the second youngest in his family of 6 girls, so spoiled was his middle name. They searched and found specialists in California, Texas, and New York. New York made most sense because of proximity. He first had surgery in May of 2001, and then he had a second surgery on September 11th, 2001. What's wild is he was scheduled to have surgery after the Twin Towers hit, and that week he made his surgery the first of the morning, and so he was able to get in before, and thank God that helped to allow him to live longer. He also had surgery to have some ports and then chemotherapy and radiation along the way. Between 2003 and 2005, he was doing well. He continued to go to New York so often that folks on the airplane knew him by first name. In 2006, he was going to routine checkups. They started to notice that his cancer had spread and come back. Vividly remember, he started doing chemo. He was falling, slipping, vomiting, but he always pretended he was okay. Sorry. We went on a family vacation that winter, and he said, "You guys, this is going to be our last family trip together." In 2007, he started slowing down a lot. You could tell he got visibly older. He was continuing to vomit and was really sick. He eventually went into hospice, but even at the time, he was mentally strong and asked us to order him a wheelchair so that he could keep going. On August 31st, I was 14 at the time, about to start my sophomore year of high school, and I'm going to spare you all the details because I don't want to re-traumatize anyone who's experienced something similar. He passed away after seeing all of his loved ones and family and friends for the last time in our home. I'll just take a second to breathe. So after the first year of losing your loved one, some of you may know there are lots of folks around all the time. But it's not until after all of that support kind of dwindles down where you really start to feel it and start to really heal. For me, I started to heal by volunteering at a hospital on the oncology floor and spending time with patients and families. I knew I wanted to become a physician. Going into my junior year of high school, I attended a summer science academy at the University of Michigan for low-income potentially first-generation college students, and it was the coolest thing ever to hold a brain in my hand. I learned the power of community, and I started to be able to see myself in this type of role and setting. I had my heart set on going to the University of Michigan and ended up applying and being accepted and using my dad's story as motivation and letting that speak through my essays. I continued to stay involved with hospitals and did research at Mott Children's Hospital. I had an assignment my sophomore year that allowed me to dig into the history of asbestos. This is when I learned that asbestos was still legally used and reached out to Linda to learn more. I also realized on campus that there was no one who really cared about this. They thought it was a thing of the past. So what I did was started to talk about it more in class. Any opportunity that I had to use asbestos and share in projects and assignments, I did. I ended up applying for a scholarship and ended up winning, which was great. And that was through an essay I had written in my English class. I participated in Relay for Life, and you can see my candle there for asbestos victims. I also made a video for my persuasive writing class about why we should ban asbestos. So you can't really see it here, but I actually went back and found the first messages I had exchanged with Linda back in 2013. And so the first one, we connected about a year before when I was getting more information about the project. Then she messaged me like a year later, long story short, because you can't see it, offered me an internship. We got on the phone within like 5 minutes, and then I was going to California that summer. Typical Linda Reinstein. So thanks to my wonderful mom, we got in our car and we drove to California. So that summer, I had the opportunity to go to medical conferences, spend a lot of time in Los Angeles, hold a Senate staff briefing with these wonderful experts here, and continue to learn more about education, advocacy, and community. This is my fourth conference working with Linda. I've continued to work with Linda since our first exchange on Twitter in 2013 in some capacity. And these are some of photos from the past conferences. Make sure you all thank the interns. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that people don't know. So during this time on campus at U of M, my personal experience continued to drive my academic and professional pursuits. One of the best things that could have ever happened to me was getting stopped in the Diag, which is the center of Michigan's campus, and asked, do I hate cancer and love kids? That was my first introduction to Camp Kesem. I hope you all have heard of it, but this is a summer camp run completely by college students. It's essentially a nonprofit that the college students do everything from fundraising to recruitment to training, and it provides a free week-long camp for kids whose parents have or have had cancer. It's a space where kids can be kids. It's not a therapeutic camp, but naturally conversations come up a lot. It was a healing opportunity for both campers and counselors. My senior year rolled around and I realized I hated organic chemistry and physics and I no longer wanted to be a physician. I still really liked the idea of public health. Around the time I was going into my senior year, I got recruited by Teach for America, and because my parents were immigrants from Iraq and my teachers had a big part of why I think I made it to Michigan, I decided to become a teacher. I said, let me try this out. I loved Camp Kesem. I fell in love, however, I was extremely burnt out. I taught in Detroit. I was at a school where there were 3 principals in 3 years. By the 3rd year, I was being pulled out of class to be the principal. At one point, our water was brown and my students still had school that day. And so I started to think a lot about systemic barriers and really wanted to explore policy to learn more about how we can make systemic change. So this brings me to where I am now. I applied for a Teach for America Capitol Hill Fellowship and have an opportunity to work in policy and the intersection of issues, and I get to work on health, education, labor, and whatever else the senator would like me to do. It allows me to work on all of the issues I care about, and I'm really finding that I'm loving the policy world. Oh, and also all views and my experience here are my own. I know we need to say that, so I'm not here on behalf of my office. Some things that I do, I get to practice research and analysis, create briefing memos on proposed legislation, have the opportunity to meet and collaborate with folks from around the world. It's a privilege and honor to serve in a position like this, and I would have never been able to do it without what Linda has taught me, and this was really the beginning for me. So I want to leave you with 2 questions. What can you do to help and build the next generation of leaders? And how can you use the power of your personal story to make a difference? Thank you.